This is a building owned by the local electric company, Western Mass Electric Company, which is a subsidiary of Northeast Utilities. Built in probably 1928. It was a transformer building, the transmission. So outside you'll see the major lines that run all the way up to Belchertown and South Amherst, all the way up to North Amherst and beyond Leverett's, the main direct. So this is, at one point in time, this is where it was probably taken down and converted to use at local housing. This is before my time, back in about 1990. Whoever was on the board at that point was looking for a new location and cut a deal. They were moving out of here. It was a dispatch use, mainly for the trucks and the crews. So they gave the space over, which there's photos that you can, more than welcome to take a video of to show the difference. So we, at that point, cut a deal, the board, for us to come in and renovate for X amount of square footage. And with our input of capital budget money was a reduction in our square footage over it. But there were 12-year leases, and in the middle of our second 12-year lease, they started changing some of the guidelines, which we weren't too happy with, and it's gotten to the point where Western Mass Electric is now, in their term, recapturing a building. We have 1 year to move out.
Okay. So in the current space, not talking about your new space, I know you said you have a lot of common areas, but what's the square footage footprint of the building?
We're a little bit over 4,000 square feet when you add storage area, but there's a lot of hallway space. So it gets hard when shopping, because everyone you want more space, because we're turning this into the Art Walk as one of the sites for Amherst. It's becoming used by more community organizations that are not affiliated with television per se. So you want to become a community center hub, and so with that comes square footage. You can't do it in just editing suites.
Absolutely.
So there's a problem.
And how many staff members do you guys have
on board? We have 4 full-time, 2 part-time, and what our bulk of our work is done by them, us, but also interns because of the 5-college situation Amherst finds itself in. We have 3 of those colleges, 1 university, 2 colleges, in our geographical zone. So we rely on about 20, we've been using about 20 interns per semester to help us cover all our government shoots and above and beyond.
Okay. Your educational channel, I noticed you're playing JoJo's Dream Car. It's a show we have. But do you find it challenging to get educational programming, or is it much easier for you because you have the college situation?
Interesting. I thought it'd be easy to get more people involved with the educational channel. For whatever reason, I think that the vogueness of that changed about 20 years ago. And, for instance, University of Massachusetts gave a full school, elementary school called Marks Meadow, as a lab school for their education department to use. Well, they've just taken that back, and the town's left because no one was putting money into the property. Mm-hmm. So when I came, I've had already 4 superintendents in my 3 years here. So every time that I start a new dialogue, the person ends up leaving. So the current intern has been here for a while, very interested. She just came in and asked to shoot her a regular ongoing show. And I'm expecting there's a lot more interest right now in having a superintendent see the potential both as so I see us doing more locally produced shows than we've ever had or have had in a very long time. We also use the satellite for downloading. We use university channels, the Princeton, other places that we try to put on TED shows, if you're familiar with TED.
I'm not. Could you tell me?
Well, we can give you more of that information later. Sure. But they're PEG, we go to PEG Media.
Okay,
pull down things
we do
that
pull down
feel
from PEG Media, yeah.
Is of interest. So that might have been normally on 12, but if it has a science or education, we feel is, not by the strictest term, but we will put it on.
Sure.
We use classical arts for the weekends on 15, and we run it off our satellite. That's free. That's our older population here really appreciates it.
What satellite service do you use? Your satellite service is free, or you pay for the satellite service?
Direct.
You have direct.
Dish. I think Dish.
Either way, it has local.
Small fee.
You're right, but so it's got channels on it that are duty free.
Yeah, but we mainly use it for Democracy Now!
Okay.
And the classical arts.
Okay.
And then the ability to grab the university channels.
Sure.
But other than that, we don't do much.
So you referred to your facility as a media center.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I think what it means is that we can't continue to corner ourselves off and have people believe we just do television. That it's just changed so dramatically. The ability to have your telephone be a video camera and a still camera and a computer is a very long way from where people couldn't get access to TV equipment in 1972. So I mean, what you have to do is look at what we believe you have to do is reinvent ourselves. We've always been trainers. We've always been a center for distribution. We've always been a center for local transparency and programming. So you want to use that as your center, but expand it into the social networks, expand it into the other components that you don't normally associate as traditional television.
What are some of the trainings that you've offered here? You mentioned something to me earlier that I
Well,
thought were
we're
interesting.
getting into more things like Skype for, especially for the older members in the community that would want to keep in touch with family, grandchildren across the country. They really responded to that. We've done teleconferencing for non-Spanish, non-English speaking community members, a town meeting for Cambodian Khmer speakers that was nationally held on diabetes. We're going to start offering Photoshop. We do Final Cut Pro, we do field equipment, we do audio training, but now we're getting into Photoshop and some of the After Effects and some of the more advanced aspects. One of the interesting things is that we've just applied for, and we think we're going to be given the okay to be an Apple authorized certification center. And we believe that that's going to help us diversify our financial situation. We're about 96% dependent upon our cable franchise, and that's just not right. It should be, I want to move in the next year or so to 80-20 and eventually 60-40, break out of that. And I think if we get the authorized certification center by Apple, that gives us a chance to really charge for a lot of other, we'll still do our Final Cut Pro for those that want to learn and at a lower rate, but those that want to come out of college or as a professor or a worker that wants to be certified for the job to actually have that, and we'll have that available.
So you mentioned Final Cut Pro, and we saw your editing rooms a little bit earlier. How important is it to have massive amounts of editing space for the community to come in and use, or do you feel it's underutilized?
It fluctuates. As I say, a lot of the college, here's again, a lot of people have the computers and their laptops, so you want to level the playing field. There still is a digital divide even at colleges of what a person can afford. It's easier to buy a Dell but not an Apple. It's easier to buy software that's not Apple driven, and it's expensive. So we also look at open source. We train on Blender as an animation program that we show people that you can download for free, and we do trainings on it. So whenever possible, we love to be totally open source here, but it's not stable enough, some of them, to run the office and whatnot. But we are going that way as much as possible and showing people how to do that. But getting back to the importance of being editing suites is that truly is the challenge, right? You have from the very amateur individual who's just learning, if you will, to someone that's played with it in high school on Premiere, but they now heard about Final Cut, so they have the basis and they want to now come here, because most public schools don't have Apple. They tend to be PCs, right? So that whole group of young people wanting to work on projects, the more you can do the After Effects, motion, and other things like that, and start showing them and teaching sound issues, then even if they're loading up to YouTube, it's going to be a better looking. That's what we sell on. We do everything that's going to make your product look better. Mm-hmm. And then explain to them the distribution through cable is also our website. As I mentioned to you, we're part of the dark fiber, which connects all the colleges, which was the 2.0 web stuff many years ago. So our pipe is very large, and we're very lucky. We're tied in through the town. So we now have maybe at any one time about 500 videos that you can watch on demand off of our website. very quick opening, very, so people, and the new Drupal website is even gonna be more integrated into that. So people they come in and say, do you have HD cameras? Well, HD TVs were sold to the consumer before there was HD television, right, programming. So right now, anyone you hand them a PD-170 says, this isn't HD. It's like they have no clue that that's a very sophisticated, high-end sophisticated camera. And HD will not show up on cable. So you have to re-educate, especially college age and younger, or slightly out of college, that HD's fine for loading up. Takes up a lot of space. And you can load up and it looks great. But certain things shouldn't be HD, don't need to be HD. A lecturer lecturing in a hall, HD does not really add much, except make the person look older, have bad lighting, So, we're very aware of the contradictions, but we feel that, especially because there's so much youth in our immediate area, and at the same time, the largest growing population of Amherst permanent residents are older, retirees. So trying to service both of those is very different, and we have to service, but the younger is asking for and expecting to have access to the top. So if you don't have this year's Apple Final Cut 7, then they're really upset because somebody else has got it. So that's the problem of going, if there's a problem with Final Cut, is staying current. Yet, they're getting better about not making huge changes. It's subtle changes. So did I answer?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, thoroughly. So I know it's not as much of an issue because you folks are going to be looking for a building soon, but if there was one thing that you could have done different here, what would it have been?
Oh, if I was here when they built this out, yeah. I would have definitely not done a drop ceiling. I would have left the exposed steel beams. One, I think it looks better. I think drop ceilings is only for hiding bad wiring jobs and mouse droppings and everything else, So maybe it saved a little on heating, but I think for tight, organized rewiring for what you have to do and the updates of what we have to do, because we're fiber now, we don't know where it's going to be in 5 years, right? You don't know what you're going to have to change over to. Cat what? 10? Okay, who knows if this country ever really got up to where the broadband should be. So I would want to build this in a way that I can get access to my wiring, that it's very clean, it meets codes. My engineer can get to it and not have to get up there with a flashlight and try to figure out where everything's supposed to be. The same would be if I was going to build my new studio. This studio was built in a way that they made the pipe for all the wiring only big enough for what was needed. No, you can't sneak a straw through there. And that was Copeland and Lynn were the developers. So I would have had a real problem with that while that was being decided, because we needed to reconfigure our headsets in there, and we thought of all different ways to do it. But the pipe not only doesn't come straight under the ADA ramp, it does a 90-degree angle twice. So it could have been a straight direct link as far as I know, and no one's told me it couldn't have been. And wider, it could have been wide enough to walk through if you wanted, crawl through, but instead it's very tight, and that then allows even to put wiring for 3 headsets through to change over. So I would, there's that kind of stuff when you're doing I think the sound isn't very good in there. If you notice, it's got material on the walls that really deadens the sound. You also want to make sure that if you're going to go with high-end being old style lighting, tungsten lighting and all that stuff that's in there now, you want air conditioners that are silent, which they're very good in there. They really come up fast. They're very efficient that way. So that was a very good job. Again, being ADA ready was great, because you don't want to do that after the fact. That's the problem with people offering you all sorts of old buildings, and you go, yeah, the first thing I got to do is build a ramp with very heavy, legal boundaries around it. So it depends what your desire is. Every community is different. We're expanding our use of this space, as I said, with the Art Walk, with other organizations using it for teleconferencing, for teaching. We hold about 50 to 60 people comfortably in there right now in folding chairs. That's really nice not to have to leave site because you can't have a function. there's been more town meeting, coordinating meetings here prior to the full, to do live from our studio so that they can inform, have an audience asking questions about the warrants coming up and things. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do when you know you can hold an audience. So I worry that our space, I gotta figure out, it can be smaller, ceiling-wise with the cooler lighting and the LED lights and soft lights. But you still want to be able to, I feel, have that variety opportunity.
The first thing that I noticed walking around the facility that was unusual from other places that I've been was the radio station.
Yes.
So please tell me more about the radio station.
Sure.
How did you come up with that idea? Well, I guess not how did you come up with it, but why did you come up with the idea? And has it been good for your facility?
Okay. Let me answer this in two ways. Because part of it took place before I was part of this organization. So originally, what happened in either 2003 or 2004 is that the FCC opened up a window for licensing low-power FM stations. The organization applied and was granted the frequency 107.9. We have the way it was granted, we were actually given a share time agreement so that we're only on the air 12 hours a day from noon until midnight. And we share the frequency with another group in town. Yeah, can you give me that?
Yes, absolutely.
So that all happened before I was part of this organization. When I came on board about 4 years ago, we found a location for our transmitter in town. Our transmitter is not located at this facility. And then created a volunteer-run organization, WMCB, Low Power FM. Completely run by the volunteers who have the radio shows on the station. The theory was that it's going to draw, it was within the scope of the access model that we've been using here. The theory is that there's very logical crossover between the television and the radio station and the radio and the television station. What we found is that it brought in a completely different group of people than the TV station had been bringing in. I think it's been wildly successful. We have an ad hoc committee that oversees it. That again is made of the volunteers who work at the station. We do the technical support and the engineering for it. They do training. And it's only about 2 years old, so they're still developing the business, but they created their own operations procedures and whatnot. It is under the umbrella of GCTV, so the GCTV board of directors has final say over anything that's big, but ostensibly they're given autonomy, except for big issues that come up. Because of the share time agreement, we've also now taken it on the web, so we're streaming it live 24/7 on our website as well. again, going with the model of that, we're pushing as much content as we can to the web. This is another mechanism to help drive people to our website.
Mhm. Now, the facility itself, has it always been housed here on the third floor of this building?
Yes.
So it's,
Yep, when GCTV was incorporated in the mid-'80s, this was the facility that they built for us.
okay.
Again, it's an old Masonic temple that was broken down into independent condo units. So we own this condo within this building. There's a condo association that we're a part of. Located on the third floor, not directly on the street, but located on the main street in Greenfield. And was originally constructed, this condo was originally constructed with the idea that it would be a television studio.
And how many members would you say that you have?
We use a little bit different model. We don't have actual memberships to be part of the organization. The theory was that we want to get as many lay people in here as possible. Ostensibly, anyone who lives in Greenfield can come in and sponsor a program or produce a program. And we go out and primarily focus on soliciting the local businesses and organizations to come in and use us as a tool to help them generate videos or promotional content. So we get your lay people coming in who are interested in producing shows. Then we go out and actively solicit organizations and businesses to utilize us as a resource.
So I have a question about that. So are you folks a nonprofit here?
Yes, we are.
You are a nonprofit 501c. So how does that work? So you go out and you solicit a business, and they come in and they make a video or promotional commercial or something like that, and you act as a video house tour there?
No, it's implicit. It's
Okay.
not, I'm from X business and we have X product.
Uh-huh.
It's, as an example, the guy who runs a movie theater in town has a movie review show.
Okay. Right. I got you.
So it is not, it's
Sponsored by him.
absolutely not someone coming in and telling about how awesome their business is.
Mhm.
But we used to have two guys who run an investment company here in town would come in and talk about the stock market. And
Right,
they
I
would
get
talk
you.
about proper ways that you can invest your money. Now,
Mhm.
they wouldn't talk about their business model, but
Mhm.
implicitly they're an investing group here in town, so that if people were looking for people, they might kind of put two and two together.
Right. And did they give you any type of financial backing for that? So that's just them coming in as an access user to use the studio to push their business,
Correct.
just to drive
Well, yeah.
to drive programming.
To not saying that they're using it explicitly to push their businesses, but I trust you understand.
Yeah, I do. Just trying to clarify. So, one thing for revenue that I heard that was very interesting, that first time that I've heard this, is that you guys bring bands into the studio and then you'll master their music for them and sell them the masters.
That's something we're talking about doing.
Oh, okay.
Not something that we're doing right
Oh,
now.
okay.
But we've had a long-running music program here. It was originally created as a partnership with one of the local radio stations, WRSI, which is a full-power radio station in our area. The show was originally created by one of the DJs there and what they would do is bring in local bands to play. Originally they were only playing, a 15 or a 30-minute set. In the early 90s, the radio station decided to discontinue the show, and GCTV approached them about continuing it. And lo and behold, it's been here ever since, 12 years. It's a weekly show, live music, bands come into the studio, it's open to the public. And we get all sorts of different local acts. Northampton tends to be a kind of hotbed for music, so we get a lot of acts coming up from down there, from Brattleboro. We've had bands come out from Boston to be on the show. And again, understand, this is an independent production. The independent producer here is now runs. We've done what we can to help them facilitate this. It has been run by independent producers. We've helped find producers as producers have come and gone. It's had 3 producers or 4 producers in the course of the show. We've acted kind of as the steward in between producers. But it is an independently run production, not exclusively a part of GCTV. So at the end of the show, bands will walk out with a CD of what they've done, as well as a DVD of what they've done that they can use to promote, get gigs, or whatever they want to do with it. We put it up on our website, again, video on the web being one of our primary ends now. And one of the things that we've talked about is installing a multi-track recorder to give people the ability to create multi-track recordings when they're doing the show that we could potentially sell back to the bands if they're interested.
Right. How many active producers would you say that you have?
Okay. Clarify producer. Producer to mean people who come and utilize the facility, or people, including people who bring in programs.
Community members that are actually producing programs here at the facility.
If I was to guess, I would put the number around 70.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Again, depending on the productions, and then in addition to that, we have people who come in with foreign programming they just like to see
Right.
broadcast here. But yeah, I'd say around 70 probably.
And how many staff members do you have here?
2 full-time and 2 part-time.
Okay.
And we frequently take on interns as well.
Okay.
We actually just finished with 1 intern, and we'll be looking for another one.
Another interesting thing that you said to me was that you actually house or host committee meetings here.
We do.
So tell me how that works and what committee meetings actually meet here.
There are 2 groups, 2 local government committees that meet here. The town council and some of the subcommittees in the town council, as well as the regional council of governments, which is located here in Franklin County. And so they actually come to our facility. We open up the studio. The public comes in. We host all of the meetings right here within our facility. As you saw, we have a fairly large studio, so we can accommodate as many as 80 people in there. And it's been really great because it gives you a mechanism to get people who would not otherwise be coming in here to come in here, so that we have many lay people coming in. That gives us the extra, it's the low-hanging fruit. You have the people coming in anyway. They're much easier to solicit to come in and use the facility. And then they're like, oh yeah, I saw the town council meeting there,
right.
Rather than just walking up to somebody on the street. Hey, why don't you come in and produce a TV show?
Right.
You'd be like, well. But if they're already here, a great example is last week we were hosting we have a state rep seat that's strongly contested in the coming up preliminary elections in September. Well, one of the candidates brought some of his family and supporters. One of whom was a 10-year-old girl, and so while I'm directing the show, I look out and I see her peeking in the window of the control room. It's like, oh, why don't you come in? Let me show you about how things work. So she sat in there and watched how we were doing everything, and then at the end I said, hey, well, why don't you come back again? And next time you come back, I'll let you run the switcher and I'll let you run the soundboard. She said, really? I said, absolutely. So I go out and talk to her dad. Lo and behold, this girl's going to be coming back, in a couple of weeks. She's 10 to learn how to run all this equipment. It's the lowest hanging fruit that there is. Somebody peeks in the door and says, oh, hey, come on in. Let me tell you all about it.
Right.
So it's been reasonably effective.
So as far as the facility goes, what is one thing that you would change about the facility if you could?
Sure.
One of those, man, I wish we had done this kind of thing.
Sure. There are 2 primary issues that I found when I was looking through here. First one is visibility from the street. You drive by on the street, you can't see us. Now, as you probably saw when you looked at the outside of the building, as you saw when you were in our back room here, there's these beautiful stained glass windows on the outside, so I can say to people, oh, look for the stained glass windows, that's where we are. But otherwise from the street, you can't see where we are. Being in a condo association, there's 5 other businesses in this building.
Right there.
So it's nothing that stands out where there's a huge marquee or something like that downstairs, outside that you can see. Issue 1. Issue 2 is storage. We do have a large storage space upstairs, but it's not easy to access. Excuse me. It's not handicapped accessible, so we can't let any of the public up there. So the storage in our studio is pretty daunting. We have to kind of tuck things in the corners, shove things out of the way, do what we can to kind of hide things behind the curtain because storage is so minimal in there. So those were the 2 primary things that I came up with that were really big issues here.
And what's the best thing about your facility?
Workflow. The workflow here is great. Like I was showing you, we can cordon off the office from the studio. So if we're running large productions in the studio, it doesn't necessarily have to interfere with our day-to-day business that's going on in the office. Also, while we're not visible from Main Street, we do sit right on Main Street, and you really just can't get any better than that. We're on the primary walking way in downtown Greenfield. You know, it's lined with businesses, all the people are going by all the time. This is where people come to when they go anywhere in Greenfield. So we are centrally located. Central location is tantamount to everything.